There was a time when the most important thing that happened inside a home happened around a table. Not on a sofa, not in separate bedrooms, not through messages sent from opposite sides of the same house. Around a table, with food that someone had spent the afternoon preparing, and people who knew, without being told, without being reminded, exactly which chair was theirs. The meal was ready at a certain hour. People arrived naturally. Nobody had to schedule it. Nobody sent a group message asking if everyone was free. Nobody checked their calendar to see if dinner fitted between two other commitments. It simply happened because it always happened, because that was the shape of the day. And for 30 or 40 minutes every single evening, in a terraced house in Birmingham or a clapboard house in Ohio or a tenement flat in Glasgow, life slowed down. People talked, people listened, people noticed each other. In 1965, most families sat down together for dinner almost every night. Today, many families cannot remember the last time everyone sat at the same table without a screen between them, and researchers now believe that disappearance may be connected to something much bigger: loneliness, anxiety, disconnection. Not as occasional feelings, as a public health epidemic that the United States Surgeon General declared in 2023 to be as damaging to the human body as smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. Because the family dinner table was never just about food. It was where people stayed emotionally connected. It was the daily maintenance of the people inside a family, the mechanism through which ordinary human beings, busy, tired, distracted, imperfect, kept finding their way back to each other. And slowly, quietly, modern life removed it. Not all at once, one convenience at a time, one distraction at a time, one screen at a time. This is a story of how that happened and why getting it back may matter more than most of us have stopped to realize. To understand what we lost, you first have to understand what the dinner table was actually doing, because it was doing far more than feeding people. Every evening, when the family gathered at that table, something invisible was happening, something that had no name, because nobody had thought to name it yet. It was simply the texture of family life, so ordinary, so consistent, so present that it did not register as anything special until it was gone. Every evening, families paused long enough to notice who was quiet, who was changing, who was hurting. A boy upset after school might say nothing for the first 10 minutes. He would push his food around, answer in short words, avoid his mother's eye. But the table held him there. He could not leave until the meal was finished. And in that enforced proximity, in that gentle, unavoidable sitting together, something would shift. Then suddenly, quietly, into the space between the passing of the bread and the clearing of the plates, he would say, "Something happened today." That moment does not happen on a sofa with a screen. It does not happen in a bedroom with a phone. It happens at a table. It happens because the table requires presence, because the people around it are close enough to notice, because the daily repetition of sitting together has built enough trust that the difficult thing can finally be said. Ordinary conversations repeated thousands of times across years create emotional closeness that cannot be manufactured any other way. Not through intensity, not through planned family activities or scheduled heart-to-heart discussions or weekend bonding experiences. Through repetition. Through the daily, unremarkable, absolutely essential act of being in the same room, at the same table, for the same 30 minutes every evening, without exception. The families who ate together knew each other, not perfectly, not without conflict or misunderstanding, or the particular blindness that comes from being too close to someone, but deeply, in the way that only daily proximity can produce. They knew each other's silences as well as their words, their moods as well as their opinions, the way someone holds a fork when something is wrong that they have not mentioned yet. That knowledge, built one ordinary evening at a time, was the foundation of everything else, of trust, of belonging, of the unspoken certainty that however the day had gone, there was a place in the time, in the group of people where you were expected and known. Then something changed, not suddenly, quietly. In the 1950s, a new piece of furniture arrived in living rooms across Britain and America. It sat in the corner, it glowed, and for the first time in the history of the modern home, it offered the evening something the dinner table could not: entertainment that required no conversation, no engagement, no emotional effort of any kind. The television entered the living room, and for the first time in modern history, entertainment competed directly with conversation. For the first few years, most families kept them separate. The meal happened at the table. The television was watched afterward. The two things existed in sequence, not in competition. But the boundary was fragile, because the television was always there, always available, always easier than the effort of genuine attention. In 1953, the Swanson Company in America turned that shift into a product, the TV dinner, a complete meal in a foil tray designed to be eaten while watching television. It was marketed as modern, convenient, the future of eating, and it was genuinely clever. But underneath the marketing, something deeper was changing, something that the cheerful advertising copy did not mention and that nobody paused to examine at the time. The shared meal was no longer necessary. For the first time in human history, a meal had been specifically engineered to make sitting together optional, not as a philosophy, as a product feature. The tray sat on the lap, the eyes faced the screen. The conversation did not start because the conversation was not the point. The strange part, the part that makes this story complicated and human and true, is this. Families did not stop loving each other when the TV dinner arrived. They didn't stop caring. They didn't stop wanting connection. They simply stopped gathering. And they stopped gathering not because they had decided to, but because the structure that had made it inevitable had been quietly removed. And without the structure, the habit began to fade. By the 80s, convenience became the organizing principle of modern life on both sides of the Atlantic. And convenience, applied to the family meal, had effects that nobody was measuring at the time, but that would show up clearly and consistently in the research conducted decades later. The microwave arrived in British and American kitchens through the late 1970s and 80s. It made individual meals effortless. Not a family meal prepared over an hour and served at a fixed time, but any meal for any person in 4 minutes at any time that suited them individually. The coordination that the shared dinner required, everyone home by 6, everything ready at once, the whole household operating on the same rhythm, was suddenly unnecessary. Schedules became fragmented, work hours stretched longer, children's activities multiplied, families became busier in ways that felt productive and modern and entirely reasonable individually, but that were collectively dismantling the daily rhythm that had once pulled everyone back to the same room at the same hour every evening. Dinner no longer happened at one shared time. It happened whenever each person happened to be hungry, in the kitchen, at the counter, in front of the open fridge, in front of a different screen in a different room. The house still existed, the family still lived in it, but the center of the house, the daily gathering point, the moment that the day came home, was fading, not dramatically, not with any announcement, just quietly, meal by meal, evening by evening, until the table became the place where the post was left and the school bags were dropped, and nobody quite remembered when it had last been properly used. Because connection is not built through intensity, it is built through repetition, and the repetition had stopped. We have covered how the table faded, but what came next, what the research discovered when it went looking for the consequences, was something that surprised even the researchers who found it, because the damage was not where anyone expected it to be. Stay with me. Then came the smartphone, and unlike the television, this screen did not stay in one room. It followed people everywhere, into the bedroom, into the car, onto the table itself, into the last remaining spaces where the family had still been gathering, however imperfectly, however briefly. Research from the University of Essex confirmed what many families had already begun to feel without being able to name it. The mere presence of a phone on a table during a conversation, even a phone that nobody touches, even a phone that sits face down and completely silent, reduces emotional connection between the people sitting there. Not slightly, measurably, significantly. Because once distraction becomes possible, people stop being fully present with each other. The attention becomes conditional. The conversation becomes something that can be interrupted at any moment. And when conversation can be interrupted, people make a calculation, often without knowing they are making it, about whether the thing they need to say is important enough to risk the interruption. And the important things consistently get decided against. The difficult conversations get delayed. The quiet child who might have spoken stays quiet. The couple who needed to reconnect almost manage it, but not quite. Families did not collapse all at once. They slowly stopped looking at each other. They sat at the same table when they sat at it at all and faced in different directions. And the invisible work the table had always done, the noticing, the daily maintenance of connection, the catching of the quiet boy before he closed off completely, quietly stopped being done. But the real damage was not what disappeared from the table. It was what disappeared from people. The loneliness that followed was not dramatic. It did not announce itself. It arrived gradually, in the growing distance between people who lived together but had stopped knowing each other, in the conversations that were never had, in the dinners eaten separately in different rooms with different screens for company, in the feeling, familiar now to millions of people in both Britain and America, of being surrounded by people and somehow, inexplicably, alone. The 1960s dinner table was not perfect. It should not be remembered as though it was. Families argued there, children complained there, and dragged their feet coming to it, and sat in resentful silence when they arrived. Fathers came home tired and distracted, and brought the weight of the working day to a table that was not always ready to receive it. Mothers served meals they had made with exhausted hands and sat down last and got up first, and were thanked by no one often enough. The table did not manufacture happiness. Proximity was never the same thing as harmony. But perfection was never the point. Proximity was. The daily, non-negotiable, everyone-present proximity that meant that difficult things eventually got said, that the quiet boy eventually spoke, that the couple who had not properly talked in 3 days were at least in the same room, at the same time, close enough that the distance between them had a chance of being crossed. A family that only gathers when everyone feels like it gathers only in its easiest moments. The 1960s family gathered in all of them. And it was in the difficult ones, the tired ones, the argued ones, the ones where nothing much was said, that the real work of staying connected was quietly, invisibly done. You probably remember a table already. You do not have to search for it. It comes immediately. The cloth, if there was one, the particular smell of whatever was cooking, the sound of plates being carried from the kitchen, the exact chair that someone always sat in without anyone ever deciding that was their chair. It simply was. You remember the sound of your name being called from another room, meaning, "Come now, it is ready." You remember sitting down without thinking about it, because it was simply where you went at that time of day, without scheduling it, without deciding it, without it ever occurring to you that it might not always be there. You did not know then that you were being held together by something as ordinary as a meal at a fixed hour. You only understood it later, when the table was gone, when the chairs were empty, when the meal was eaten alone somewhere else with a screen for company, and no one to tell about your day, and no one to ask about theirs. That absence has a name now. Researchers call it loneliness, and governments call it an epidemic, and health organizations publish reports about its physical consequences. But you knew what it was before they named it. You felt it the first evening the table stayed empty, and the house was quiet in the wrong way. And some part of you, some part of almost everyone watching this, has been looking for that table ever since. Not the piece of furniture, the feeling, the 30 minutes, the being expected, the being known. You don't need to recreate the 1960s to reclaim what the table built. You only need one evening. Not every evening, not a new household policy or a formal family commitment. One evening this week where the phones go in another room, not on silent on the table, not face down beside the salt, in another room, where the food, whatever it is, however simple, goes on the table in the center, where everyone who lives in that house sits down together and stays there until the plates are cleared. Don't call it anything. Don't announce it as a new initiative. Just set the table and put the food on it. Because what the research consistently finds, and what the 1960s family knew without research, is that the conversation doesn't begin immediately. It takes 10 minutes of ordinary nothing. Someone mentions something small. Someone else responds. A child says something that wouldn't have been said in a bedroom alone with a phone. And then, somewhere in the unremarkable middle of a perfectly ordinary meal, someone says the thing they actually needed to say. But the table has to be there first, and it has to be there tomorrow and the day after. Sit down together. Stay long enough for the silence to become conversation. Don't rush the ending. Your grandmother didn't think about it this carefully. She had the meal ready at 6 and called everyone in, and that was the whole of the method. You can do exactly the same. Somewhere tonight, a table is being set. It's not a grand gesture. It's just plates and forks and a chair pulled out for everyone in the house. The food is nothing special.
The conversation will start with something entirely ordinary. How was your day? What happened? Anything good? But it will start because the table is there, because the people are around it, because the evening has a center again. That's all the dinner table ever was. Not a piece of furniture, a center, a place where the day came home to, where the people who mattered most were gathered close enough that they could notice each other, could hear each other, could reach each other across the ordinary distance of a meal eaten together at the same hour, in the same place, without anyone having to ask. If this video brought back a memory for you, a table, a smell, a chair that was always yours, share it with someone who still remembers it, because that memory isn't just yours. It belongs to everyone who has ever sat down somewhere and felt, without being able to explain it, that they were exactly where they were supposed to be. And if you want more stories about the parts of life we quietly lost along the way, subscribe and bring someone with you, because there's more of this to find.